Today we're going to talk about a breakup, a huge one. We're calling it the Great Breakup in philosophy, a time when the very idea of truth just shattered, and a whole new generation of thinkers had to figure out how to rebuild our understanding of reality from the ground up.
So let me just ask you, how do you know what's true? I mean, really know it. Today, you'd probably say something like, well, I use logic, I look at the evidence, I trust my senses, and that makes perfect sense, right? But what if I told you that for over 1,000 years, that's not how it worked? Not even close. Okay, this slide right here, this is the whole story in a nutshell. On one side, you've got the medieval world. For them, truth was handed down from on high. It came from the authority of the church, from ancient books, from tradition. It was external. But then, the modern world flips the script completely. Suddenly, truth isn't something out there anymore, it's in here, inside your own mind, based on your own reason and what you personally experience. This was nothing short of a revolution.
Now, to really grasp how radical this change was, we have to take a quick step back and appreciate the world that came before. It was a world built on absolute, rock-solid certainty.
For centuries, truth was basically set in stone. Look, it's not that people didn't use reason. They absolutely did, but it had its place. When it came to the really big questions, about God, our purpose, the universe, you didn't just sit in a room and try to figure it out for yourself. You looked to the established authorities. And honestly, it created a very stable, unified, and predictable world where everyone was more or less on the same page.
But then, things started to shake. And not just a little. We're talking about a couple of explosive centuries where that whole stable foundation just began to crack. It was like one intellectual earthquake after another, shaking everything people thought they knew to its very core.
And this wasn't just one single event, it was a perfect storm. First, you get humanism, which starts celebrating the power of the human mind itself. Then, bam, the Protestant Reformation comes along and fractures the single ultimate authority of the church. And just when you think things can't get any crazier, the scientific revolution delivers the knockout blow, with guys like Galileo proving that direct observation could completely overturn truths that have been accepted for centuries.
So, with all these old pillars of certainty just collapsing, a new mood starts to sweep across Europe, profound skepticism. Thinkers like Michel de Montaigne started asking this deeply unsettling question: if the authorities could be wrong, could we ever be truly certain about anything?
And this is the crucial point. Europe was in a full-blown intellectual crisis. I mean, if the church can be wrong, if Aristotle can be wrong, who could you possibly trust? All the old anchors were going, and philosophy was completely adrift in a sea of doubt.
But every great story needs a hero, right? Well, this is where our protagonist enters the story. A man who looked at all this chaos and decided to find a new, unshakable foundation for truth, even if he had to tear everything down to find it.
And that man was René Descartes. Now, Descartes wasn't some sheltered academic. He was a soldier who had seen Europe's brutal religious wars firsthand. He was completely fed up with all the conflicting ideas he found in books, so he made a radical choice. He was going to trust nothing and no one but his own power of reason. He truly believed it was his personal mission to rebuild all of human knowledge from the ground up.
To find his unshakable foundation, Descartes used a method of radical doubt. He questioned everything. I mean, everything. He asked, how do I know I'm not dreaming right now? The feeling is just as real. How do I know some evil demon isn't tricking my senses? He systematically threw out every single belief that could possibly be doubted. And after demolishing his entire belief system, he found one single indestructible truth left standing. He could doubt his body, his senses, the world around him, but he could not doubt that he, the one doing all the doubting, actually existed. The very act of thinking proved his own existence. Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. And with that single sentence, the foundation of knowledge shifted from external authority to the internal certainty of the individual mind.
Descartes' breakthrough was like a philosophical big bang. It created two major schools of thought, basically two different paths that thinkers took to try and build a complete system of knowledge on this new foundation of the self.
So the first path was rationalism. Following in Descartes' footsteps, thinkers like Spinoza and Leibniz believed that true knowledge comes from pure reason. The idea was that you could discover fundamental truths about the world just by using logic and deduction, almost like solving a math problem, without ever needing to rely on your senses.
But another group, the empiricists, took a completely different approach. Thinkers like John Locke and David Hume,
argued that reason by itself is totally empty. They believe the mind starts out as a blank slate, a tabula rasa, and that all of our knowledge is written on it by our experiences, by everything we see, hear, and touch.
Now, this wasn't just some abstract academic debate. These new ideas about truth had explosive, real-world consequences, especially when you start asking one of the most fundamental questions there is: how should we organize society? And here we see two hugely influential but totally opposing answers. You have Thomas Hobbes, who believed that without a powerful leader, life would be a chaotic war of all against all. So his solution? We surrender our freedom to an absolute ruler in exchange for security. But then you have John Locke, who argued that we're all born with natural rights, life, liberty, and property, and that government should only exist by the consent of the governed for the sole purpose of protecting those rights. Two completely different visions for society.
So for over a century, the rationalists and the empiricists just battled it out. It seemed like philosophy was stuck between these two extremes. But then, a towering figure emerged who found a revolutionary way to bring them both together.
And that was Immanuel Kant. His Kantian synthesis was a massive breakthrough. He basically argued that both sides were only half right. He said, sure, the empiricists are correct that all knowledge begins with experience, but he sided with the rationalists that our minds aren't just blank slates. His brilliant insight was that our minds have an innate structure, like a filing system, that actively organizes the raw data from our senses into a coherent understanding of the world. You need both.
And this famous quote from him just captures his grand project perfectly. He united the external, observable world of science, the starry heavens above, with the internal, rational world of human freedom and morality, the moral law within. He managed to provide a new, powerful foundation for knowledge that shaped philosophy for the next 200 years.
So we've seen how the total collapse of one worldview forced this incredible new era of philosophy, sparking this profound debate between reason and experience that continues to influence us today. And it leaves us with a question for ourselves. In your own search for truth, what is your foundation? Is it the logic of your mind, or is it the evidence of your senses?